The world didn't change the moment the telephone rang. It changed in the silence before that rang, in the realization that, for the first time in human history, distance had lost its power. A message no longer had to travel by horse, by ship, or even by telegraph, wiretapping dots and dashes into the night. A human voice, warm, immediate, impossible to fake, could leap across miles in an instant. That simple act tore open the seams of geography, rewrote the rules of business, and quietly built the foundation of the modern global economy. This is the story of the telephone, not as a quaint invention of the 19th century, but as the first great collapse of distance and the doorway to everything that came after. The story begins in a world where communication had always been physical. Letters needed time, roads, and bodies. Telegraphs required training, translation, and infrastructure. Even the wealthiest merchants and governments operated on slow information. And the lag-shaped global power. Then comes Alexander Graham Bell. Standing in a cluttered Boston workshop in 1876, Bell was not trying to change the world. He was trying to improve on the telegraph. Multiple messages over one wire, that was his goal. But while experimenting with vibrations and electrical currents, Bell stumbled onto something far greater. A device that didn't send symbols, but sound. The moment Bell transmitted his faint phrase, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you," for the first time, communication gained the speed of electricity and the humanity of the voice. But inventions don't reshape the world simply by existing. They require systems, capital, adoption, and crucially, imagination. And that is where the telephone became something much greater than a scientific curiosity. At first, people didn't know what to do with it. Newspapers mocked the talking telegraph. Many saw it as a toy. Western Union, the telegraph giant, publicly dismissed Bell's patent as not possessing any commercial possibilities. That mistake would cost them the future. Because, while critics laughed, a quiet revolution was taking shape. Businesses started placing telephones in offices. Doctors installed them for emergencies. Shop owners used them to contact suppliers. And city by city telephone networks spread. Small at first, then merging, connecting, expanding, until they formed the first modern communication grid. What made the telephone different wasn't just technology, it was the psychology of immediacy. Humans didn't have to learn codes or wait for delivery. They simply spoke and were heard. Trust changed, decisions changed, speed changed. By the early 1900s, companies realized the devastating economic truth. Whoever controlled communication controlled commerce. The Bell system, backed by aggressive patents and a monopoly mindset, began swallowing competitors. AT&T transformed from a small upstart into one of the most powerful corporations ever created, building an empire of wires stretching across a continent. This wasn't just corporate ambition. It was infrastructure nation-building. AT&T poured money into long-distance lines. New insulating materials were invented. Engineers worked to overcome electrical resistance, and in 1915, the impossible happened. The first transcontinental phone call from New York to San Francisco. The human voice had crossed an entire nation. The telephone didn't just eliminate distance, it exposed the cost of being disconnected. Wall Street traders gained faster access to markets. Newspapers heard breaking news before rivals companies synchronized production hundreds of miles apart. Police and fire departments reacted in minutes instead of hours. Families maintained relationships across vast distances. Every industry that depends on time, energy, finance, logistics, healthcare evolved around the new expectation that information should be instant. And then, in one sweeping technological leap, the telephone achieved something even bigger. It began to globalize the world by the mid-20th century. Undersea cables stitched continents together. International calling went from a futuristic luxury to a strategic necessity. Companies expanded across borders because communication now traveled at the same speed as money. Diplomats settled crises without boarding ships. The global economy synchronized in real time. The telephone became not just a tool, but a backbone, the invisible nervous system of modern civilization. Yet the real transformation wasn't in copper lines or switchboards. It was in the cultural rewiring of humanity. People learned to expect immediacy, to react quickly, to coordinate at scale. A world that once measured communication in days now measured it in seconds. This shift, the collapse of delay, set the stage for the 20th century's greatest innovations. Radio, early computers, satellites, the internet, smartphones. Every leap emerged from the original idea that voices, data, and eventually everything could flow freely across networks. In a way, the telephone wasn't just an invention. It was the first crack in the wall separating people from instant connection. And that crack widened, decade by decade, until the world became what it is today, a place where distance barely matters. Information moves faster than thought, and communication defines power. The irony is that the telephone began as a solution to a technical problem and ended up rewriting the structure of societies. It democratized opportunity, strengthened governments, destabilized others, accelerated globalization, and transformed economies from slow-moving machines into fast, reactive organisms. The real reason the telephone changed. Everything is simple but profound. It redefined what now means. Before the telephone, every decision lived in a bubble of uncertainty, waiting for news to travel. After the telephone, the world operated in shared, simultaneous time. Humans could coordinate like neurons in a single, networked brain. And once a civilization can think together at the speed of electricity, the trajectory of history changes forever. The echoes of that transformation shape the present moment. Smartphones are simply telephones with superpowers. The internet is the telephone system stretched to infinity. Social media, video calls, global markets, all are descendants of that first fragile wire-carrying bell's voice. Distance no longer rules us. Delay no longer limits us. The telephone made that possible, and in doing so, it didn't merely connect people. It connected humanity to its future. The telephone entered the second half of the 20th century with unstoppable momentum. But what came next wasn't just expansion, it was transformation. A shift from human operators to automated switching. From copper wires to digital signals. From national networks to a fully integrated global web by the 1960s. The world was buzzing with a new concept, connectivity as a public utility. Governments realized that phones weren't luxuries, they were economic engines. A nation with telephones could coordinate production, respond to crises, and integrate into the global market. A nation without them fell behind, fast. Investment exploded. Massive government programs wired rural regions. Cities became dense communication hubs, and behind the scenes, a new generation of engineers worked on a breakthrough that would fundamentally redefine telecommunications. The transistor, small, efficient, and unbelievably powerful. Transistors made it possible for the telephone network to go digital. This wasn't just clearer audio, it was the birth of capacity, the ability to handle millions of calls across oceans with silence, stability, and speed. Digital switching centers replaced mechanical relays. Fiber optics replaced aging copper. Signals traveled not as electricity, but as pulses of light, faster, cleaner, and capable of carrying far more information than Bell could have imagined. Yet with all this progress came a deeper realization. The telephone wasn't merely a device people used, it was a platform that society built itself around. Consider finance. The global stock market, once limited by time zones and manual communication, transformed into a near-simultaneous web of trades, prices, and decisions. The 24-hour global economy didn't emerge because of computers alone. It emerged because telecommunication made continuous coordination possible. Or consider government. Diplomats could now speak instantly during crises. Leaders could command military operations in real time. Intelligence agencies tapped into the same networks, discovering that information speed could alter geopolitics more than armies. Even culture evolved. Long-distance relationships no longer faded into silence. Families separated by borders stayed emotionally connected. Music, business, news, everything accelerated, but the most significant revolution was happening quietly inside research labs. Engineers began asking a dangerous question. If voices could travel instantly, what about data? By the 1970s and 80s, packet switching technology emerged, allowing digital information to move independently across channels once designed for voice. For the first time, the telephone network began carrying not just conversations, but the early signals of the modern internet. Modems screeched, servers hummed. Researchers sent the first emails. The global telephone infrastructure built over a century became the skeleton of a new digital universe. Mobile phones soon followed, beginning as bricks of plastic carried by the wealthy and eventually shrinking into pocket-sized supercomputers used by billions. Wireless towers replaced landlines. Satellites connected remote villages to major capitals, and suddenly, connectivity became not just an advantage, but a human expectation. Today, every message, every notification, every video call, every transaction, all trace their lineage back to that first moment when Bell's voice moved across a wire. The telephone didn't just create communication. It created immediacy. It reshaped the brain. It restructured economies. It rewired geopolitics. It taught humanity that distance was negotiable, and then eliminated it. As we look at the modern digital world, it's tempting to credit the internet, smartphones, or social media for the transformation of society. But beneath all of them lies an older revelation. When communication becomes instant, everything else accelerates. Innovation accelerates. Conflict accelerates. Collaboration accelerates. Civilization accelerates. The real legacy of the telephone is not the device itself, but the mindset it unlocked. A mindset that expects connection, demands speed, operates in real time, and builds systems that assume information will flow forever. Without friction, we are living in the world the telephone imagined, a world where humanity behaves like a single, interconnected organism. And as new technologies emerge, quantum networks, AI-driven communication, fully decentralized systems, they do not replace the telephone's legacy. They amplify it, because everything we call modern began with one wire, carrying one voice, across one room, a quiet signal that shattered distance and rewrote the destiny of the world.